Can you sing? Can you dance? Can you sing? And a good day and welcome back to the only gardening channel that isn't really about gardening, because what is gardening but planting the seeds of your life? I thought I'd go around and give you guys a bit of a garden tour. It's been a while. I think the last video we did was hail destroyed our garden, and that's over a month ago, and things have just come back so incredibly strongly. It just goes to show you how resilient things are. And I wanted to show you around, talk about my process of growing food, things that I use, very unconventional, but they make perfect sense to me. I'm also excited to say that the reason I haven't really been making content is because I've been in a cave of sorts, basically birthing a book, and it came out. It didn't come out, it came out of me first. It's not out for you yet, but it's the first time I've done like more of a cookbook. Of course not traditional, but it's called Fermenting with Your Best Friend. It's all about fermentation, preservation, and liberation. And the idea is that, there's a lot of recipes and things. Everything I know about fermentation is in there, but the basic idea is that fermentation is really about setting the stage and setting the container for transformation to occur. It's this invisible thing. You put the right conditions in place, and out comes some magical, delicious kraut or sourdough, whatever it is. And for me, the kind of thing I'm sharing is that in this book, it's the same thing as life, right? When we set the right conditions in our life, things begin to change in a good way, usually. So that book will be out in a few months. Stick around if you want to learn about it. Here's one of our gardens. This is more of a hugelkultur style. So I got this from my neighbor. They didn't need any more. I filled this up with wood, like pieces of wood, logs, all kinds of stuff on the bottom, instead of having to fill it up with all soil, which would be expensive, and then soil on the top. And I've been amending it and fertilizing it. And check these out. These are chickpeas. Not a lot of people see chickpeas growing, but they love chickpeas. So look at that. That's a chickadapia right there. Check it out. As you'll see, most of my beds are pretty wild. They're not your standard gardening beds. We've got it's actually chicken poop under here. Delicious, magical chicken poop. Leaves. Compost garden. This has been one of our longest standing gardens. This is a gigantic goji berry. And the goji berry is kind of right now it's the leader of the pack, but I have this June berry that hopefully in time will take over and just become huge. And there's oregano. There's, marigold, dotura, comfrey, tomatoes, just different things. That's kind of a nice little random array of things of sorts. Let's keep going. By the way, doing another cannabis ceremony, August 26th, I believe. If you're interested, let me know. You enjoy life music at gmail.com. And I realized all these years, I think people think I say you enjoy live music, but it's life music. Anyhow, let's keep going. This area I'm very excited about. The way that I like to do gardening, especially in Colorado, is more of a permaculture-esque style, where you're observing the land and you're just growing things wherever you can. That makes sense. So this is all, it doesn't seem like much. There's wild grasses all around here, but right in this patch right here, as you can see, is wheat, followed by corn. So check that out, a bunch of corn, and followed by more wheat. And look how cool this wheat is. This is from Masa. Look how pretty that's going to be. It's not quite there yet, but it turns like this really cool black color. I also put raspberries in there, more raspberries. There's another Juneberry. Right, schmeh. Pretty sweet, gotta say. Got some flowers along here. You can see these like wild ground cherries, pumpkins. I have different melons and stuff. They're kind of young. They're not doing super well yet. This is pretty new soil. But the idea over time is to grow things that are long, like pumpkins and melons, and grow them down the hillside. This pumpkin's having a good time, as you can see right there. And the intention of this video is also just to kind of show you one way of gardening. And this ties into the book. So what I've noticed with information is that there's just so much information out there. Everybody's saying, oh, this is the best way to do this, and this is the only ultimate. It's all, of course, understandably to get people to click on your video and whatever, but we're living in like the age of information, and what happens is people just think they can take shortcuts and they can look something up and, oh, this is the person, they gave this recipe, or this is how I do it, boom, that's it. And that's fine, learn from other people, be inspired, but at the end of the day, you gotta get your hands dirty. At the end of the day, you need to start thinking for yourself and discerning these million different recipes. You know, when I look up fermentation stuff, everybody has a different way of doing things, so I have to get my hands dirty and actually figure out what makes sense for me. So that's the basis of this book, and I don't think there's any book quite like it. I'm not saying it's a good book or a bad book, I just know that in the world of fermentation, there's no book that combines this concept of fermenting things and preserving food and also understanding who you are kind of on a much more deeper level. Right, so here's a garden that has a lot of flowers and thingies. There's also tomatoes hiding in there. Tomatoes are really starting to take off, and something that I've noticed is with anything you're planting, any annuals, it's a patience game. At first you put stuff in the ground and it's just like nothing's happening. But a lot is happening underneath the soil. That's another good little lesson, my friends. In life, maybe the external is a slow process, but internally things are happening. Our programming is changing as we're learning about who we are and what makes sense in this world, and we're kind of going through our fears and kind of releasing things that don't serve us. Things are happening internally, and then slowly over time the external reflects that, but it's very slow. We have to be patient. I've got some raspberries here. Oh, that's a blackberry, thornless. Got a raspberry actually. Look at that. Would you look at that? Our first raspberry. I'm gonna eat it. Wow, it's tart. Wow. Oh man. We're in for a surprise, folks. Come on down. So all this stuff used to just be, even this past year, just random wild growth and what have you. And we started getting crazy. There's our rooster. This is all Sunchokes, aka Jerusalem artichoke. And you'll see it has a nice sunflower once that pops off. But what's cool about these is they're basically a perennial. So I should say there's different kinds of, we have annual plants that you have to plant every year, like tomatoes and peppers and stuff. Perennials, which come back every year. Biennials, which grow for 2 years. But every plant, makes a seed, pretty much as far as I know. So even if something doesn't, isn't growing every year, speaking of seeds, let's plant that raspberry seed right there, flick it off. And that's also another way. I throw seeds everywhere and see what grows. Anyhow, so even if something is an annual, like a tomato, if you let the tomatoes grow and you let some of them fall on the ground, they'll reseed themselves for the next year. So my goal is to, even with annuals, is to kind of create this wild garden where things overgrow, and then whatever plants wants to survive, it plants its seeds, and then I can thin things out over the year. What's cool about Jerusalem artichokes is that, this, once you plant them once, they'll basically take over. This whole area, which is wild, over time, when I can dig these up all winter, and I'll get these beautiful tubers. And then what happens is, the ones I don't dig up, next year they become new plants. So it's impossible pretty much, unless you're really diligent, to dig them all up. So you could eradicate them, but once they get going, why not? They're delicious. They have a beautiful flower, hence the sunchokes, because they kind of have like a sunflower looking flower. And they grow really easily. They require very little work. I watered these a few times when I put them in, and it's been a rainy year, haven't had to touch them. If you know something, Jerusalem artichokes, they make you fart like crazy. It's not necessarily bad. People, shame to fart, but they actually have a ton of inulin, as I'm told, which is like a prebiotic in your gut. So, and I learned the hard way. We got some that we planted, and I took a few and I boiled them and roasted them, and it was one of the best. We couldn't believe how good they tasted. It was like, almost felt like a potato meats, like when you like a fry potato, or like that smash fry method. It was like a potato meats, almost like a really nice piece of cod, or what's the nice white fish that people are like really freak out about, whatever, fatty fish. Anyhow, we ate too many, woke up in the middle of the night not realizing that was why, and we were just farting uncontrollably. So as I've learned, you either have to ferment them, which I'm fermenting right now. They're really good fermented, and that helps with the inulin, helps with your belly, or you have to just slowly ease your way into them. We overdosed. All right, so how about this? My allergies have been pretty good this year. I had a couple weeks where I was like destroyed. Anyhow, this is just out of a fence until things get started to protect from the deer. Not that it does much, but what I have here at the house, we have a tub outside, and if you ever come stay for a retreat, you can chill in the tub and check out this beautiful view. And the tub drains into here, and then I water this bed with the tub water. One of the reasons being is Epsom salt. Sometimes Aja puts in the tub, and asparagus are one of the actually plants that enjoy Epsom salt. So I planted mostly asparagus in here. I also have some corn, which is starting to take root. Not take root, but flower or whatever you would call it. And some random things I threw in. A wild river grape I grafted, and yeah, so that's pretty cool. Now we have amazing neighbors, and they have this huge garden bed, and I plant a lot of stuff all over the property, and it's great, and however, check it out, take it slow if you're going barefoot always. However, we don't have like big open, just straight raised bed kind of things, but our neighbor who doesn't use his garden bed said we could just take them over. So first year living here that we actually have these huge beds, and this is the real creme de la creme. So it's literally just like a minute walk from our house, and it's great. We come here every day and we check on the plants. He put a drip system in. I still do a lot of hand watering. I think drip systems are really convenient and they're very helpful, just to kind of set a timer, but I don't want to just set it and forget it. One thing I noticed about drip systems is that they focus on specific plants, which a lot of people want because then the weeds don't grow as much. But I actually like when the whole ecosystem is growing. I like when everything gets wet. So this year I've been doing a lot of hand watering, and also it's been raining like crazy, so that's been awesome. Right, welcome to our garden. Got feverfew here, really good medicinal herb. Some kind of zucchini. It's pretty funny. I don't love labeling things because I kind of just like things to be what they are without having to give them a label. As weird as that might sound. But I did label things this year, and then all the labels pretty much washed off. So very few things I actually know what they are. Got some crazy sounds going on over there. This is Sanitas, which is like one of the most popular trails in Boulder we can reach from the back of our house. I have some watermelon and some Ogun melon coming through. I had to buy some melons. Pretty much everything was from seed originally, and then when the plants got wiped out, I bought a few things to kind of replenish. Tomatoes are happy. I have a shade cloth. It gets really hot and sunny here, and there hits a point where tomatoes, they might look really green and beautiful, but they have trouble putting out flowers and flowering. So you put a little shade cloth on, that can help. See the melons. These guys are, I'm telling you, every time I come back here, it's like, it feels like everything is doubled. It's just gotten to that point where things are really taking root and they're really happy. I do have to come through every day, and there's a lot of bindweed, which this is bindweed. And people consider it one of the biggest nuisances in the garden, and it is. It's a process. You have to. It's everywhere. But I find that's part of the meditation. Just kind of coming here and just picking it out. And it's easy to assume that something is just a weed, and we can just call it a weed. But it's kind of like a racist term for plants because everything serves a purpose. And you might say, oh, well, it's invasive. It's not native. But what is native? How far back are we talking, right? Because at some point, most of these things are not native. So, understand the great balance of life. More zucchini. There's some maybe I'll pick our first little baby zucchini, why don't I? Look at that. That's sweet, very cute. More. Look how beautiful. These flowers were just kind of a volunteer here. Their garden was totally overgrown when we took it over, and we've just been really amending the soil and doing what we can. Chamomile. I've just been drying all this and making lots of tea. I've been picking these carrots. Let me see if I can pick one. That does happen. If you don't have a thing to dig it, sometimes the carrot breaks off, especially if the soil's not super loose. But let's see here. See if I can yank her out. You can do it. Okay, I'm gonna get something for that. But I've been pulling out these beautiful carrots. I've been harvesting so many carrots almost daily. This is a little guy. We also have beautiful beets here. This one's probably ready to go. And I know, like, I can let these grow a lot bigger for sure, but I don't know, I like that size. It's not always about bigger is better. I know that's like an American thing. Check out these tomatillos. They grow in these little husks, and then once they kind of start to break and they get bigger, they fill out, you can harvest them. Some tomatoes here. You'll notice, like, yeah, there's all this bindweed and different dandelions and things, but you'll notice that it's not like everything is super jam-packed, and I have space if I want to plant more things throughout the year. There's been this bug, I think it's called like beetle slug, or I forget the name of it, but it's been all over the kale and also the cabbage. Maybe it's called cabbage slug. And I've crushed some, but mostly what I've been doing is just letting it do its thing. And you take a hit on the kale, but it sort of prefers the kale, so it's almost like a decoy plant so that everything else can do well. Now what I've noticed here is there was this cabbage bug, and I think it's common for people to react. This is in general in life. Think about like when the pandemic hit, everybody just starts freaking out and reacting. People are dying, we need to shut the country down, and everyone's just freaking out. It's like, wait a second, before we freak out, let's just pause and take a breath and think about what's actually going on, because things happen every day and things change. And so when I look at something like this and I come here, I can just start reacting and like, oh, I got to run out and get some pesticide and spray it all over the place. But what I come to notice is that if I just sit and I wait and I observe for a little bit, I start to make sense of things. And what I've noticed here is that, at some point, the bug just started to die. I think other things come along, predators, and it starts to eat it, and now it's gone. So my cabbage might look a little bit like Swiss cheese, but it's okay because I'm going to shred it anyway for, I'm going to shred it for some sauerkraut. Got some beans. I've been picking a lot of these. Beans are starting to come in here. These are a type of bush bean. Let's see. Yep, see basically all of the things, they just gone. More shade cloth I just put up because it's kind of cloudy today, which is great. More chickpea here. The holy basil. I planted holy basil everywhere. Aja and I love holy basil, and I kept planting it, and it just wasn't coming up. And I realized it was just a cold spring. And then one day, now it's like, kaboom, and we have endless holy basil all over. There's regular basil there. And you'll see that even though I have some things in certain areas, I still like to just kind of, put things wherever. So there's like onions sprinkled through, all this cabbage, different brassicas, cauliflower, Romanesco, Brussels sprouts, things like that. In the back I have a lot of cucumbers that are really starting to come in, and it's cool because you'll come one day and there'll be like no cucumbers, and then the next day it's like, oh my good lord, those cucumbers starting to grow. I have peppers here, different types of beans. Beans are another one because these bush beans, they sort of hide. It's easy to not see them. And I like that. I like it to be a treasure hunt. I take people through here. We do dinners, come over. Cannabis is offered. A little ceremony. And then we do these amazing meals. People can walk through the garden and just take time and look around. Pick things, eat things, try things. Wow. So if you're ever in Boulder, let me know. Cilantro. Next to these peppers. This is a habanero hot pepper, but see, the cilantro is all go into flour. Now I have some cilantro here that I keep picking, keep using it and processing it, using it fresh, whatever. I let a lot of my cilantro go to seed, and then I get the coriander seeds, and then you can plant them next year, or you just let them. You actually see some here. Look at this, is all coriander, and some of that will just spread into the garden for next year. The lettuce, also same thing. it can feel overwhelming to plant this much and just be like, oh my god, I don't have time to harvest it all. And that's the cool part, you don't have to harvest it all. To me, seed saving is one of the coolest things. So when you get into seed saving, you let your lettuce that you don't need. I mean, this plant looks beautiful, right? The leaves go bitter as it flowers, and then you get lettuce seeds. And then we'll have endless lettuce seeds. You have to see the peas, similar deal. Once they hit a point where they start getting too starchy, I just let them go to seed. And let's see if I can open here. And then I have peas, which I can cook and eat. Look how beautiful that pea is. I can sprinkle them on the ground for next year. And I can save them for more seeds. Yep, so the kale, same deal. It's kind of gotten eaten through, but everything else is just looking really healthy. And when you plant, you want to think about spacing with stuff. Some things like to be closer together than others, but ultimately you plant a tomato and you have to keep in mind, there's all this open space, but as that tomato gets bigger, it's going to take over. And yet, I still like to crowd certain things because, you can train the tomatoes to go in different areas. I can take this tomato here and I can put it up there, and then suddenly there's all this space. And I can even honestly stick it through, right through the super duper, right like that. And then that's going to also just give it some support. And, plants are delicate to a point, but they're also very resilient. I normally do this a little more carefully with two hands, but I can put it there and I can tie something onto it, and then it will keep growing out that way. Just like people, plants like support. And then I pull out this bindweed just a little bit, and I just keep pulling it out until the other plants grow enough that, they start to choke out bindweed. More peppers. All these beets are coming through. I'm just going to let them do their thing. There's some purslane, which purslane is a wild, something people forage for a lot. Juicy. It's nice. It has it's very earthy. When you get into foraging, you start to realize that our domesticated palates can't handle a lot of the really delicious and beneficial things. What's the word? Nutritional things that people are into. So once you start getting used to that, appreciating it, things start to change. So here, first off, there's this huge thing of lemon balm that's just been here. And then we planted a ton of strawberries. Now, most of these do not have strawberries on them deliberately because I picked them, because it's good. A lot of plants, it's good to not let them fruit in the first year so they really root well. But I wanted to have some strawberries just to see how they taste. So yeah, the strawberries are doing their thing. Next couple years, this is just going to be this huge bed of deliciousness. All right, let's give you the grand reveal now. So, to take you up to the grand reveal, share a few things I've learned, a few musings in the garden. It seems like a lot to have a lot of plants, and I always say start small, grow one thing, But over time, they say, taking care of one plant isn't much different than taking care of 100 plants, because on some level, if you have the time and the space to be patient with these things, to walk around, care, tend to, maybe an hour every morning, I walk around, check out the plants, fertilize them if they need, whatever it may be. It doesn't take me that much time, especially when you're growing more permaculture style. It's a bit of a hill. Permaculture style where things are just kind of all over. You're not so obsessed with all these tiny little details. Sometimes things get eaten. Sometimes things don't make it. But you grow enough, ideally, to have enough. For everybody, not just yourself, but for the plants and the bugs, and I grow a ton for my chickens. So, you ready for this? Probably been seeing the greenhouse in a while. Say hello to my little friends. So I have a few tomatoes in here. It's mostly, this greenhouse is designed for cannabis plants. We actually have our own strain growing this year. We don't know if it's male or female. We should know soon, but hopefully it's female, so we get the flowering. But either way, we're excited to have our own strain. We call it Green Rose, in honor of my name and Oz's name. But the cannabis are looking really, really happy. So green, so vibrant. You'll notice some of the leaves were being eaten by something. Again, I looked at the leaves. I didn't notice anything. But then I saw these guys come into play. And, you know, this is just my theory, but I think whatever was on there attracted them. Because I haven't seen them eating the plants. I think they would have devoured them. But whatever was on the plants, they were eating. And now there's a family of them. We've got some tomatoes here. So cherry, and I've actually got it now up on top. So these are going to climb up. Got a nice tomato here. There's a lot of controversy around this, but you know, a lot of people say you can just pick the tomatoes when they're starting to turn red, and that they'll taste as good as ones that are fully red on the tree. Because when something starts to turn red and you pick it, it will then do its own thing. It will then ripen on its own. So, yeah, something I've really learned about writing this book is that sometimes in life we just have to learn from the mistakes of ourselves, maybe other people, but it's so nuanced, everyone's situation. Like when I moved here, there was nothing about gardening in the mountains in Colorado, like on YouTube. That's how I learned. So I had to figure it out myself, and I'm still learning every day. Before I moved here, I didn't have chickens. I didn't know anything about chickens. Wow, look at all these flies over. You guys eating all the flies? Before I moved here, I didn't think we'd have a rooster, even when we moved here. We got chickens. And then a rooster snuck into the flock. And now the idea of him not being with us is kind of sad. Even though he wakes us up at 4 in the morning, because that's our bedroom window. I tend to wake up actually right before him. I'm an early riser. I wake up usually around 4 a.m. every day. Look how beautiful this guy is. He takes care of the flock, and that in the afternoon I actually let them out, and I let them just free range on the mountainside, and they always know how to come home. So may this be some kind of reminder to you, if I need to like professionally wrap this video up, that no matter what you feel inspired to do, or want to do, or you feel driven by, you know, all you can do is take the first step, first barefoot step. And ultimately it doesn't matter what you're doing. If you have a goal in mind and a destination, by the time you get there, you're going to be a different person, because it's the journey that changes us. And when you get to the goal, oftentimes we realize that the goal is kind of irrelevant. Maybe it didn't fulfill us in the way we thought it did, but that's fine, as long as you realize that the goal is the thing that takes you on the journey. And going on the journey is the beautiful piece. It's not there's no end goal, there's no place we get to where it just all makes sense. Maybe one day in death, who knows, but the goal is the thing that drives you forward into something. And it's like writing this book. I didn't know where it would take me and what would happen, but it was a journey of the learning process and going through those things and seeing my own reflections. That was beautiful. And now seeing how it's inspiring other people. You know, it's not about telling people that you have to ferment, or that fermentation is the way to go, or that it's special or better, or you must eat organic, or you know, all these things that people say we have to do. We have to go back to the way things were. I'm not trying to claim anything for anybody. All of our situations are very nuanced and unique. And yet, the more we tune into what makes sense to us, certain things just naturally make sense. Like the rooster crowing.